Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin by wishing a good afternoon to all of you in our time zone, and I would like to give an overview of my presentation. And so I have broken my presentation into three sections. The first one is introduction and the present state of the banking in the 21st century, utilizing the latest digital technologies. The second section covers why the sluggishness in the adoption of innovation in the banking industry. The final section explores how digital transformation and innovation can make Sri Lanka the banking hub of South and Southeast Asia. When I speak of banking and banks and lending, since my childhood, one big picture looms in my mind. It's Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. In my mind, I can vividly see Shylock, the infamous moneylender, begging in front of Antonio, who borrows money from him to help his friend Bassanio to get married to Portia for mercy. Shylock had asked for a pound of flesh in return for 20,000 ducats that Antonio had borrowed if he were to default. Antonio's ships do not arrive on time, and Shylock invokes the lending contract. Portia, in disguise, defends Antonio in court and finds Shylock guilty for trying to take the life of Antonio by asking the pound of flesh closer to Antonio's heart. The old Shylock asks for mercy. I am a Jew, he says. Hath not Jews eyes, hath not Jews hands, organs, dimensions, senses, affections, passions fed with the same food, hurt with the same weapons, subject to the same diseases, healed by the same means, warmed and cooled by the same winter and summer. So these are the words of Shakespeare. But later on, Italy comes into mind when I talk about banks. The present form of banking and the banks where the Medici family founded, it's called the Medici Bank, a forefather to all banks in the world today. Later on, I was startled to find that the ancient Sri Lankans were no strangers to banks, banking, lending, and paying interest. The rock inscription found in the jungle in the Vaunia in the eastern province, which is known as a Thonical inscription, in the eastern province, speaks of sponsoring Aryavansa Puja, conducted at a temple nearby using the money derived from the interest of storing harvest in the bank. King Sri Meghavanna, the son of King Mahasen, where we know him as a tank builder, carved this rock inscription between 303 and 310 AD. Sri Lanka was a hub for trading in the ancient world, and the Sri Lankan kings of the past maintained two harbors, one in Mana in the north and Trincomalee, located in the northeastern Sri Lanka, as a free port. All these harbors were filled with ships that were laden with exotic goods from Persia, Greece, and China. Traders from Persia exchanged goods with traders from China. Amphoras filled with rare wines were exchanged with the fine silk from China. The same two ports exported some of our goods and wares to the known world at the time. Sri Lankan traders exported elephants, steel, which later became the Damascus steel, cinnamon, sapphires, and rubies. Traders would have banked not only the harvest, but gold, silver coins from Rome, Persia, Greece, and India. For me, the banking is the flow of money and information. In the ancient world, it must have been goods and services as well. And storing or keeping data on these transactions, the goods and services as well, and storing of these transactions. This data would become information after processing, according to the theory of Claude Shannon, the father of information theory in the modern day. To enable storing data, humans invented many different inventions, and such an invention is writing. Technology for record keeping has also changed over the years. Babylonians and the Sumerians kept data on clay tablets, and the ancient Sinhala people wrote on rock slabs and subsequently on olive leaves. Europeans adopted Chinese invention, paper, which was brought to Europe by Marco Polo. Paper and pen became the recording devices for banks until 1950. Bank of America, so the change comes in. The Bank of America introduced the world's first computer for record keeping, Remington Rand UNIVAC 1. The population in the United States in 1950 had reached 150 million by 150 million. USA saw high growth in its national gross product due to the post-war boom. Many Americans joined the burgeoning middle class in millions, with it the number of checking accounts expanded at the Bank of America, and the number of checks received for clearance was the largest in any bank in the world. The Bank of America required a solution since it had to close its branches much before 2 p.m. for the day to clear ever-increasing checks after employing a large workforce in the bank back office. The Bank of America partnered with the Stanford Research Institute to unveil the first check clearance device, ERMA, the electronic recording method of accounting. ERMA stands for the computer process checks and automated. The ERMA stands for the computer process checks and automated account management. You can see the ERMA on the screen. Well, so the next slide is very interesting. So you see the well-known actor and future president of the United States of America, Ronald Reagan, hosted a transcontinental video conference to announce ERMA's debut. The press conference showcased ERMA's capabilities. It processed checks faster and more efficiently than ever before, approximately 33,000 accounts in the time it would take an average 33,000 accounts in a time, it would take about an average bookkeeper to do 245. It handled, read, and sorted a wide variety of paper checks at high speed. It posted to accounts, identified stop payments and holds, flagged overdrafts, calculated service charges, stored accounts information, printed daily and monthly statements, and sorted 600 checks per minute. ERMA reduced the time required to process checks by 80%. It became one of the world's first successful computers for business application. But ERMA wasn't the only breakthrough contribution Bank of America made to the industry that year. Around the same time, in partnership with General Electric and Stanford Research Institute, the Bank of America also developed a magnetic ink character recognition, MICR, which is that string of numbers you see at the bottom of the check today. MCR was the solution for one of the biggest challenges. MCR was the solution for one of the biggest challenges initially encountered when developing ERMA, how to enable a machine to read the necessary information from checks, deposit slips, and other routine banking documents. The breakthrough came with the development of techniques of computers to read magnetic characters printed with black ink containing particles of magnetizable oxide. Because the reading element is sensitive only to the magnetizing, subsequent overprinting or visual obliteration had no effect on the machine's ability to read the characters. The development of the ink and the readers is what allowed ERMA to read and process the information on a check. The font, another development, was designed to allow bank staff and customers to read it as well. MCR was so successful in its design that it was adopted as industry standard by the American Banking Association, ABA, in 1956. Today, the MICR methodology remains the standard around the world. Bank of America made MICR technology available to all banks and printers without royalty charges. In 1984, American bankers stated the development of the MICR line, which enabled checks to be sorted and process at high speeds has been recognized as one of the greatest breakthroughs in banking. Well, you will see the next one, the status of banking of the 20th century. The banks have found the hard way that it has changed how they operate in the 21st century. Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, the epitome and embodiment of wealth creation in the 21st century, had said that banking is necessary. I quote, banking is necessary, banks are not. Innovation that have been made in information communication technology impacted great wealth creation in the world, giving rise to companies like Microsoft, Oracle, Google, etc. Each innovation had spurred high economic activities and transactions like never before. Some say that until the internet came into being, banking had not changed since the time of Medicis. We are currently witnessing the most disruptive technological revolution since the Industrial Revolution. The difference is quite apparent. When the Industrial Revolution occurred in the 18th and the 19th centuries, it impacted a few people in Europe, leaving a large number of people unaffected by it. The output of the Industrial Revolution was tangible, producing machinery and tools. Instead, this revolution creates an intangible product, the information. The cost of collection, storing, processing, and sending information is falling rapidly due to innovations in digital storage and data transmission. The effect of the information revolution is on a massive scale, spreading it like a wildfire throughout the globe due to the internet, mobile phones, and the personal computer. Every 2 years, the processing power of computers has doubled up to now, Moore's law, miniaturizing digital devices with a high processing power. How fast information can spread has transformed the way people think and work, even in countries like Sri Lanka. Although all companies must deal with these changes in their customers' lifestyles, and the production and distribution process, nowhere are their effects more drastic than in the service industry, where the information component carries much more weight. Banks are the epicenter of this change. Technological evolution and social changes have a deep and more direct effect on the financial industry than on most other sectors for its basic raw materials. As I said before, materials are information and money. And money, in turn, can dematerialize and transform into an accounting entries. In other words, into a data that can be stored, processed, and transmitted in real time and at costs so low that they are on the verge of disappearing altogether. Indeed, banking has not experienced up until now a transformation on a par with that undergone by other information-based sectors, such as the music industry. This is largely owing to the fact that the banking has historically been a highly regulated industry, subject to close scrutiny and controlled by public authorities. However, not only is the transformation of the industry inevitable, but it is also picking up speed with each passing day. The primary reason is that the technology revolution is introducing daily new and different ways of doing things and increasing the potential for cutting costs, while the number of users who resort to non-traditional banking methods continues to grow. In the recent past, the banks had made serious mistakes, ignoring the basic principles of banking, prudence, transparency, and even integrity. Many large banks in the world failed and went under during the last 50 years. Large sum of taxpayers' money had to be poured into saving these banks and certain financial institutions throughout the world. The colossal amount of taxpayer resources poured into saving banks has severely tarnished the reputation of financial institutions and the entire industry in the eyes of the ordinary citizen. Trust is what gives banks their competitive edge. But over the past several years, they have lost much of their customers' trust and the trust of society in general in many countries in the West. My view is that Sri Lanka is yet to undergo losing trust in banks here. But instead, during the COVID-19 crisis, I saw the opposite. Sri Lankans have begun to appreciate the services provided by the Sri Lankan banks. Sluggishness of adoption of technology. Also, the crisis has triggered this crisis in the sense the loss of trust. Process of a sweeping change in the banking regulations, borrowing limits, higher capital and reserve requirements, the need for major investments to improve risk and compliance systems, etc. All of this boils down to less revenue and more expenditure. In other words, a reduction in the current and future profitability of financial institutions. In recent decades, banks have been among the most important users of ICTs, which they have adopted with two primary goals in mind: to cut costs and streamline processes to increase profit margins, and to develop channels of communication other than the conventional branch office. Yet the original technological platform used by banks were first introduced several decades ago in the 1960s, 1970s, especially in Europe and in the United States, 1980s. And in most cases, subsequent improvements in functions were developed based on different, more modern technologies, architectures, and programs that were later added and or hooked up to the old system and ad hoc. In Sri Lanka, this is not a severe crisis. The banks had been computerized in the 1980s, have begun to experience the same at present. If it were possible to visualize the networks of the complete system of an average bank, it would probably resemble nothing too much a plate of spaghetti, a tangled web of connections, linking very different systems that have undergone a long string of changes and partial updates over time. This situation generates high maintenance cost. For example, it is estimated in the United States, the banks in the United States devote 80% of their total investment in systems to maintenance and only 20% to new development. And most importantly, it quickly becomes untenable given the pace at which the new technologies appear and customers' habits and demands change. And the conclusion and what future holds for banks. What does future hold for banks in the 21st century? Banking and banks. COVID-19 pandemic showed the world how resilient humans are. Pandemic has put a hold on the ever-expanding world economy. Instead, the world economy has shrunk throughout the globe. The adversity pushed humans to come up with new technology to combat the invisible COVID-19 virus. Innovation in vaccine technology, as well as general use of ICT, became the biggest outcome of this pandemic. Online communication instead of face-to-face became the most preferred method of communication. In Sri Lanka, the adoption of internet technology had been sluggish because of many reasons, such as the sluggishness in the last mile connectivity, lack of financial resources, etc. With the pandemic putting the economy on hold, internet-based apps and technologies came for the rescue to break free of the COVID-19. The environment has become conducive for adoption of new technology in Sri Lanka. Computerization of local language has also become vital in countries like Sri Lanka to popularize ICT. In developing nations, we find an array of truly historic opportunities. Firstly, because the majority of global growth will be concentrated in these countries in the coming decades. And secondly, because only 900 million people in the world are currently bank customers, and there are over 2 billion people, most of whom live in the world's least developed countries, who do not have access to financial services. This situation exists because in the conventional model of production and distribution, providing financial services that involve small amounts to a scattered population is not a profitable activity. However, technology facilitates the introduction of much more efficient models of producing and distributing financial services. For example, through the use of mobile phones, through the use of mobile phones, in addition to opening up a huge new market for banks, such a measure would have a tremendous positive effect on the economic development of these countries and facilitate the inclusion of most disadvantaged collectives. The fundamental tool of this new model will be a much more modern and flexible technological platform capable of absorbing all that information about customers and exploring all possible points of contact with them. In this new model, the existing network of branch offices must be given a complete overhaul. Physical distribution networks are only logical if they can offer the users added value and are perfectly integrated into physical virtual platform. This platform should allow users to interact with the bank at any time, through any channel, with no interruptions or time lapses, to quickly obtain financial or non-financial solutions at minimal cost that are perfectly suited to their specific needs and which customers can even help to design if they so wish. Many other tools such as blockchain, artificial intelligence, could make banks eliminate repetitive and mundane tasks. Finally, we have to leave from providing services that our banks offered years ago, while keeping the traditional banks' stability in the long run. In conclusion, Sri Lanka has to take the opportunity offered during the pandemic and must accelerate modernizing and streamlining technology in our banks. Sri Lanka is different from other developing nations. Our citizens have been pushed for opening accounts in banks in their childhood. Sri Lanka has one of the highest number of personal bank accounts when compared to the total population as a ratio. I would like to conclude this speech leaving the following that banks in Sri Lanka were poised to become the center of banking hub in Asia, provided that we adopt new digital innovation, streamlining the present technology available. Thank you for listening.